Codex Alera.
Oh, the Codex Alera? Okay.
Fabulous story.
We'll set the Wayback Machine for 1998, 1999, so we're right in there. And the Del Rey Online Writers Workshop has just started. And so it's a bunch of us that haven't been published yet, and we're involved in this online writers workshop. And we're talking about everything to do with writing. And so as you can imagine, it's the internet, so it's basically it's a bunch of loudmouths on the internet now. Which I'm still a loudmouth on the internet, mind you. I have some books published now. But at the time, it was just a bunch of us nobodies who were aspiring writers, and so we're furiously arguing all these different things and sharing bits of our writing and critiquing one another and slashing each other to bits and sort of all thinking to ourselves, these are the people I have to meet. And so the discussions got pretty animated, which is to say, you hit the reply button and then the caps lock and then you start typing. But a particular discussion had come up, and there were two sides of the argument, and the argument was writer's originality versus the holy idea, and with capital H, capital I, the holy idea. If you came up with a good enough idea, that no matter how terrible you wrote it, if the idea was good enough, the book would be a success, and that's what you should look for, is the great idea. And they said, as their example, they said, look at Jurassic Park. Clone dinosaurs, that could not have missed. That idea could not miss, no matter how terribly it was written, and it was. And then there was another side of the argument that said, listen, the important thing about writing a story is not that you come up with an awesome original idea that nobody's ever done before, but that you put your own spin and originality onto the idea. And that side was, how many versions of Romeo and Juliet have we seen? And you can still see good versions of them still being done. So, and I was kind of leaning that side, and so there was a plain war going back and forth, and finally the guy that was the loudest mouth on the other side looks at me and says, why don't you put your money where your mouth is? Why don't you let me give you a terrible idea and let me see you write it into something worthwhile? And being, a loudmouth on the internet at the time, I wrote it back and I said, no, I tell you what, why don't you give me two terrible ideas and I'll use them both? And the guy says, fine, and he says, first terrible idea that I want you to use is Lost Roman Legion. I am so sick of Lost Roman Legion stories. All the Lost Roman Legion should have been found by now. So that's my first terrible idea, is Lost Roman Legion. I'm like, fine. I say, what's your next terrible idea? And he says, Pokemon. I am sick of Pokemon. And I said, all right, fine. So I went and I did some research. And I researched Roman legions. And the Lost Roman Legion that everybody usually refers to as the Ninth Hibernian Legion marched off north of the wall and never came back in England. And so I said, okay, we're going to take the Ninth Hibernian Legion, we're going to assume that they marched off somewhere, and where did they go to? Land of the Pokemon. And I went and looked up Pokemon. Now, Pokemon itself is a fusion of two ideas. The first being a literalization of the Shinto religion, and the Shinto belief that there is a divine kami, or divine spirit, inside all natural things, and that a tree or a river or a mountain all have a divine spirit in them, and you better respect them. And that even a pebble has a divine spirit in it, and you better respect that. But if you don't, what's it going to do? It's a pebble. And then they took that idea and they fused it with professional wrestling, and that's where Pokemon came from. So I said, okay, we're going to have my Lost Roman Legion. I looked at the Roman legions at the time, which were about half Roman legionnaires, or about half Roman citizens, about half German mercenaries, and at the kind of camp followers that surrounded the legion. And really, if you want a colonization force, you can't be much better than the Roman legion with its camp followers. They were completely autonomous. They were very used to doing what they did. They were very professional. They could show up somewhere, plant crops, and just settle in. And I said, okay, I'll have to go off to the land of the Pokemon, and I'm going to give them a few thousand years, and they're going to develop into this kind of bifurcated society that's centered around these big Roman metropolitan style centers. But then out in the country, it'll be all Germanic freeholds out there in the countryside. And I gave them a while to build up their culture, and said, okay, and now we're going to start the story with a boy on a farm, because that's where fantasy starts. I didn't make the rule. That's where Larry came from. And I finally went back to this guy and said, okay, you know what? And I went back a few months later and said, I think I've got a pretty good idea here. And at the time, we still didn't quite know how the internet was going to work with publishing rules. So I said, I don't want to publish it here because I don't want to risk that, losing my publishing rights. Because I think I can write this up into a novel and actually get it sold. And the guy writes me back and says, oh, so in other words, I'm right. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever, man, you're right. So he was right, and I got